So we're curious about how you currently determine how you structure your training, whether it's part of an individual's professional development plan, which might be the case for those of you who are on the call doing peer coaching. Oftentimes, educators in the faculty lounge will just say, I'd really like to learn how to do this or that, and I know when I was a director of technology, that was sometimes how I figured out what my next workshop would be. And then hopefully at least some of the time, you are actually looking at a strategic plan, either at the school level or at the region, district, or even country level. And so we were curious kind of what that looks like with all of you. And I can see that most of it is kind of as an individual basis, which is great because we know that one of the challenges in making professional development work is that it is relevant to an individual's learning needs. So that's great. And some of the challenges that you might have when you are mapping to a client's goal, and usually that client is a leader of a school or district. If you're working with the ministry, possibly even at that country level, is how do you tie that back to the teacher and make it relevant for him or her. And that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about. So there are some best practices around how you do define those needs and how you identify both the needs at the organization level, which is often your client or your boss, if you're an educator, peer coach in the school, as well as if you've been hired by the ministry or a school district to do training. It's going to be really important that you understand what your client's goals are, as well as the individuals. And some of the questions that you may want to ask to help get you to this place is, what do the participants already know and are able to do? And I think it's really important that you can ask that both of the school leader, the education leader, as well as the individuals that will be partaking in the training. And oftentimes, you may not be able to have a one-to-one conversation with them before doing your workshop, but you can consider utilizing tools like, SurveyMonkey or other online survey tools to get a good understanding of where your learners are starting. You want to know what their specific goals are, not only for their individual professional development, but also for the workshop, and to really make sure that you're embedding those as part of your workshop objectives. Really being clear about what the expectations are of the school leader or of your client, and knowing what success looks like to them, not only for just one workshop, because obviously after one workshop, there isn't going to be a whole lot of transformational change that happens. Hopefully you are engaged in a longer-term intervention where you can actually demonstrate movement from the place that you started your engagement to the place where you're ending your engagement. And then it's also really important to understand what are some of the macro-level goals. So in the U.S., Common Core is a key macro-level goal. It's a new student standard. And being able to provide some context to the education leaders about how what you're doing maps back to those larger kind of macro-level goals is going to be really helpful to build your value as a trainer and or a peer coach. There are tools that we will discuss a bit later in this presentation that can help you both at the individual as well as the organization level, including individual assessments like digital literacy, the teaching of technology self-assessment, as well as whole school tools like the Innovative Schools self-reflection tool and the Partners in Learning School research. So it's really important that you're utilizing a range of tools to be able to provide not only some intelligence about how you might want to structure your workshop, but to be able to provide objective measures for where you started during your intervention and how you've brought those individual teachers as well as those organizational goals along throughout your intervention. One of the tools that can be helpful, especially when maybe an education leader doesn't necessarily know what the macro level goals are, or a tool that can be useful when you're talking to educators about how what you're doing with them relates to a larger context, is looking at ICT competencies for teachers. And this is just a slide to show you that if you're not already familiar, there is a plethora of frameworks, and I easily could have put 30 frameworks on these slides. It's really less important what the framework is, and more important that there is some type of expectation that is set for educators, so that, you know, just like students, right, good teaching practice in the classroom is you are able to articulate to the students what they are expected to know, and then you teach it, and then you articulate it again. This is what I just taught you, and then you assess for understanding. It's really the same case with adult learners. It's very important for you to be able to articulate what the expectation is for them to be able to know and do, and then are able to celebrate movement. And that is really what these frameworks enable you to do. So I'm curious, which competency framework are you aligned with? And you can use the tick bar, the little ticks at the bottom of your page. If you were not with us the first time, I see most of you have figured it out, which is great. And I'm not surprised to see that many of you have no idea at all whether you have a framework, competency framework that you're aligning to. And I would suggest you do some research to see if you do. And if there really isn't one, that can be a great opportunity for you to bring some strategic consultation and value to your school or to your district or maybe even country. So we have lots and lots of people who are in some way, shape, or form aligned with the UNESCO framework, which is great because we will talk in more depth to that framework, as well as the ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education. And they do have both student standards as well as educator standards. The educator standards are called the ISTE Net T. T stands for teacher. And I can tell you that there is about a 85 to 90% overlap of standards between ISTE and UNESCO, and in all likelihood among these other frameworks as well. So again, not as important to understand, what framework you use. Most important to know that there is some kind of framework, or that you are able to articulate to your educators that you're working with what the expectation is. And in the discussion group on the network, we will upload the documents for the UNESCO framework, so you'll have a chance to explore that on your own. And we will be exploring it in a bit more depth here. Now, if you are looking at adopting a framework either at your school or regional level, there are some things that are good practices around what makes a good standard or competency. And as educators, I'm sure you're very well aware of most of these things because, again, they're relevant for student standards. And so really a good standard or competency framework is going to be flexible. It's not going to be rigid. It's going to be able to be adopted and adapted for your particular context. Not only the organizational context, the country context, but the context for an individual. And what I mean by that is if you are a library and media specialist, if you are a teacher of ICT specifically, you will have different needs. Your competencies will need to be at a different depth than a teacher of 7- or 8-year-olds who is teaching across subject areas. So the UNESCO framework comes with many different types of documents that target different types of audience. So at the ministry level or at the regional level, it's a policy framework. There are policy documents that discuss how the framework actually ties education and ICT competencies back to the economic development of a country, which is what ministries of education tend to worry about, how the education within their country is building a strong workforce, a competitive global workforce. And so that's really what the framework does at a policy level. And then for a regional or district level, there are implementation guidelines. So how do you actually operationalize a competency framework? And this is a great tool for many of you who do function as trainers at the regional or country level, regardless of whether or not the UNESCO framework is the one that you're working with, because, obviously many of these implementation guidelines are going to be able to be utilized and contextualized regardless of what that framework is. So I think that it's very useful. It's a very meaty document, so I warn you, you may be a bit intimidated when you see the large PDF file that contains all of this information. And then finally, you have the competency standards and modules. And what I'd really recommend is that when you give this information out to your educators, that you don't overload them with all of the policy information and the implementation guidelines, that you really just provide them the competency standards, which helps explain exactly what the expectation is for an educator to know and be able to do. This is a little bit of background. I mean, the first ICT CFP was created in collaboration with industry leaders like Microsoft, Intel, and Cisco, education experts, universities, research universities, as well as ISTE, the organization, ISTE, and UNESCO all came together. And the objectives were really to be able to provide a basic set of competencies that would be relevant globally, that could be adapted locally, and provide a set of guidelines for professional development of people to be able to write training materials and assessments to really help kind of validate when a teacher has obtained these competencies. And there are global organizations that have put together programs very similar to that do that. One such organization is EPIC, primarily in the European areas, where they have mapped to educator competencies and provide a very deep and rich professional development offering, one-to-one coaching, and portfolio examination. And so they are able to do that by looking at the competencies. It's the same way that Microsoft Partners in Learning was able to look at the framework in order to determine how to write the Teaching with Technology curriculum, as well as the Microsoft Certified Educator exam. And, also having a similar set of language, a way to discuss ICT competencies is really important as well. So those are the goals. And there's 3 different approaches, and we talked a little bit about this the last time we were on the call. The 3 approaches are the technology literacy approach, the knowledge deepening approach, and the knowledge creation approach. And the technology literacy approach is really about increasing the technological uptake of students and citizens, and really building the workforce so that they can incorporate those technology skills. The educators can do that within the curriculum, and the goal is really to have a workforce that understands how to use these technologies and be able to build the economic capacity of their country. In a knowledge deepening approach, this is really about increasing the ability of those student citizens in the workforce to utilize knowledge at a higher level to actually add value to society and the economy by being able to apply that knowledge to real-world problems. And then knowledge creation obviously is really about being able to produce new knowledge and benefit from new knowledge. And this is really where innovation comes into play. And this is where, the kind of transformative things are happening both in the school level as well as in the economic, context where you have people really collaborating on a global place. I mean, the DNA database, the DNA mapping project is a great example of knowledge creation where scientists from around the world all contribute to a single database to map the genomes, and then all of those global scientists get to utilize the work of each other to create, new breakthroughs in medicine and research. So the UNESCO framework utilizes these three areas in different ways. And this is really about thinking through from a contextual level what's important. So it's flexible in that you can think about it from a breadth point of view, that it's important that a general educator, again, using the example of someone who's maybe teaching 8, 9, 10-year-old students, that it's very important that he has a broad range of understanding around the use of ICT in the classroom, whereas an ICT educator or a library and media specialist or someone who's doing curriculum design, it may be more important that they understand at a very depth level what's going on and how to move through the three different approaches. And again, being able to pick and choose, maybe even having a more puzzle approach of being able to choose pieces of this within the framework, dependent upon the role as a teacher, as a principal, as a technology coordinator. And what you'll find in the UNESCO ICT CFP document is a very, at the end, and you'll see this, it's called it's in the appendix, and it's called a sample syllabus. And this is where we really took the defined objectives and suggested methods and created a one-to-one mapping of the teaching of the technology curriculum to the objectives. And then there's also an assessment syllabus, an exam specification, which is what the Microsoft Certified Educator exam was written to. And so for many of you on the phone, those are going to be the things that are most interesting to you, is to go ahead and go back to the appendix and take a look at the example syllabus and the example exam specifications. So as you're developing professional development programs and thinking about it from a competency point of view as opposed to a skill-based point of view, these are the things that really make up good competency-based professional development. Having those standards clearly outlined, a method for being able to identify the learning gaps, not only at the individual level, but at the school, organization, district, or even at the country level, being able to have a very broad range of resources, a variety of resources, possibly e-learning resources, as well as workshops, books, et cetera, so that there are multiple ways for educators to fill learning gaps, and then a way to really assess whether those competencies have been obtained and whether educators are actually able to apply what they've learned in a real classroom context. Having peer support or mentoring that's ongoing is critically important. And one of the things that you can utilize the Partners in Learning Network for and the discussion group is to be able to create these learning communities, either virtually, or if you're lucky to be able to be working within a school over a longer period of time, you can encourage these types of learning communities within the school itself. And then being able to refine all of these things in an ongoing way. UNESCO, I believe, is planning to update their competency framework every 3 years or thereabouts. The latest update was done in late in 2011 and was released, I believe, just last November. So with that in the partners, in the PIL training toolkit, as Adrienne discussed with you, there are a number of tools for measurement and evaluation, one of which is the PIL School Research Tool. It's very important that I tell you right now that if you're beginning an intervention or a program of work with a school right now, please wait to utilize this resource. Very soon, in the next couple of months, we will be having this resource available from the Partners in Learning Network. And we are getting some feedback that because of the hundreds of thousands of people that are accessing the tool right now on this particular URL, they are having some issues, some quality issues. So really, please go and explore it here. But wait to utilize the resource until it's ported on the network in the next coming couple of months. And this is really a way to get a whole school snapshot. There is a self-reflection from both a school point of view, a leadership point of view, a teacher point of view. It's very simple to use. It is available in a multitude of languages, which is great. The school itself signs up. The tool distributes surveys based on email addresses that you provide, and then you can utilize the report to identify where educators believe they are, where school leaders believe they are from an innovative teaching practices point of view. And the idea would be that over time, you can use this as a tool to show how your intervention as a trainer is actually impacting results. And that is great for getting renewed business if you are in business for yourself, and also great if you are a peer coach or an in-district trainer to show the value of professional development and how it can actually impact results. So this is an example of that. This is looking at the notion of personalized learning. The survey asks a series of questions about how often educators are practicing these particular things at least 1 to 3 times a month. And, you know, it isn't quantitative data, but again, what you're looking to do is establish a baseline and then to measure again maybe 6 months or a school year after intervention and be able to show movement around whether educators are providing students with opportunities to learn at their own pace more often, whether they're adjusting assignments based on individual student needs, et cetera. You can use this to drive conversations and a common understanding, which is also a key to having a good professional development offering, that everybody is using a similar language and know kind of where you're headed. This works with both school leaders as well as with students. You can use this language, parents, and the broader community. So if you are in a school district in the United States that has a bond measure, for example, and you're looking to the community to provide funding resources for a technology bond, this might be a great way to highlight what the district is doing with regards to 21st century teaching practices and the difference that it can make when you do have those funds for technology as well as the professional development to utilize that technology effectively. So we're curious, what questions or tools do you currently use to help discover what participants already know and are capable of doing? What are the strategies that you currently use to figure out where your teachers are, where your learners are, and how to measure that difference? So part of that important conversation is really, bridging the gap between those leader goals and the educator goals, and kind of a combination of utilizing frameworks, utilizing these qualitative tools like Till School Research, as well as quantitative tools like portfolio, or not portfolio assessments, but the digital literacy information, as well as the teaching with technology self-assessment. And here's some top tips. So when you're designing your professional development workshops, you know, if you can use something that they can use right away, possibly having them bring their own learning activities, and having part of what you do spending time for them to figure out how they're going to actually embed that into their own learning activities, really making it relevant to the subject area that they teach. So you might want to consider, if you're in a secondary school, or if you're doing across district, doing different kinds of things like having math teachers working together or science teachers working together, and really showing how the technology skills that you are teaching can be utilized to enhance those subject area lessons. For teachers who are very kind of reticent about utilizing technology, starting with productivity might be a great idea, and showing them how they can actually save time utilizing that technology. Here's some other ideas. I'm sure you're aware of many of these, and maybe you'll have a few new ideas based on some of these tips. And one of the things that we hope to do as we move forward with these best practices is actually have you participate in them and share some of your best practices with others.